Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the absolutely epic, real-life journey of John G. Paton. We're talking about a man whose entire life was this staggering testament to raw courage, deep, deep faith, and just a total willingness to step directly into the terrifying unknown. If you're at all fascinated by people who look impossible, life-threatening odds right in the face and absolutely refuse to blink, you are going to be glued to what we unpack today. Right off the bat, to give you a sense of who we're dealing with, when Paton announced he was going to become a missionary, this elderly church member tried to stop him. He warned Paton about the horrifying dangers of where he was going, specifically that he would be literally eaten by cannibals. And Paton's response? It is legendary. He said, "Whether I am eaten by cannibals or by worms, my resurrection body will rise as fair as yours." I mean, wow. That instantly sets the sky-high stakes of this story and shows us exactly the kind of unshakable faith this guy was operating with.
Which brings us to Section 1, a fearless calling.
So let's kind of map this out like a classic hero's journey. We start with his birth in Scotland in 1824, journey through that huge pivotal arrival on the island of Tanna in 1858, his later transition over to Vanuatu, all the way to his death in 1907 at the age of 82. That's a timeline covering nearly 50 years of grueling, dangerous service in the South Pacific. But to really understand the man, we have to look at his roots. Paton was born in Kirkmahoe, Scotland, the eldest of 11 kids. And his father, James, a stocking manufacturer, had this profound routine. Every single day, he spent time praying in this small, dedicated room in their house. Paton actually noted later in life that witnessing his dad's quiet, intense prayer life had a way bigger influence on him than any sermon he ever heard. That daily example completely anchored his future faith. So fast forward a bit. As a young man doing city mission work, Paton is super inspired by missionaries like David Livingstone. So he volunteers to go to the New Hebrides, which is what we now call Vanuatu. Now you have to understand, at the time, this group of South Pacific islands was completely infamous for intense violence and cannibalism. Paton volunteered for this knowing full well that many missionaries had already lost their lives there. He was essentially walking directly into the fire. Section 2. The Crucible of Tanna. The year is 1858. Paxton and his young wife, Marianne, land on Tanna. They are full of hope, right? Ready to serve. But tragedy was quite literally waiting for them on the shore, and it struck almost instantly. Just a few months after arriving, Mary contracts a severe tropical illness and passes away. And then shortly after that, their infant son dies as well. Paton had to personally dig their graves and bury his own family right there, beside their mission house. I mean, think about that level of grief. Losing his entire family, being completely isolated, it absolutely could have broken him. But he wrote that it was only his faith and a deep sense of God's presence that kept him from just completely drowning in despair. And what's totally wild is that on top of this crippling grief, he didn't even have a moment to mourn in peace. He was dealing with a constant barrage of mortal danger. We're talking armed attacks, daily death threats, active tribal warfare right outside his door, more tropical diseases, and food shortages. There were actually multiple occasions where hostile warriors literally surrounded his home, planning to kill him or burn the whole mission station down. Paton testified that he felt miraculously protected time and time again. But eventually, things got so incredibly volatile that Paton was actually forced to flee Tanna just to survive. But here is the crucial turning point of the whole story. He transitions from this period of mere survival, unimaginable heartbreak, and forced retreat into an absolute triumph. That intense tragedy on Tanna eventually sets the stage for a flourishing, massively successful ministry on the neighboring island of Vanuatu.
Section 3. Triumph on Vanuatu.
See, Paton understood that his work couldn't just be words. It required highly practical acts of love. He actually won the islanders over through these very tangible steps. First, he provided medical care. He physically dug wells to give the community fresh drinking water, which was a huge deal and profoundly shifted their trust in him. He also taught literacy, built schools, and trained local leaders. He was practically building a foundation for the entire society to thrive. And right at the center of all this was translation. Paton had this core belief that every single believer needed access to God's word in their native language. His driving philosophy was, without Jesus, not one step. With him, anywhere. That is the fearless trust that powered his incredibly grueling, tedious translation work on Vanuatu. He translated parts of the Bible, hymns, literature, you name it, fully equipping those local believers to lead themselves. Section 4, transforming a culture. Because of his absolute perseverance through so much suffering, he started to see something amazing happen. It wasn't just a few individuals changing, we're talking about a massive cultural shift. Entire villages abandoned their violent practices. They turned their backs on cannibalism and tribal warfare and wholly embraced Christian worship. It's just this striking, beautiful example of how one life, completely surrendered to a cause, can socially and spiritually transform an entire community from the inside out. Section 5, an enduring legacy. Now, Paton didn't just keep this unbelievable story to himself. He became this wildly passionate global advocate. He traveled all over, to Australia, back to Scotland, over to the US. He'd stand in front of these massive crowds, sharing his intense experiences and inspiring so many young Christians to dedicate their own lives to service. His advocacy ended up establishing huge support networks that funded and allowed other missionaries to serve all across the South Pacific. And his impact was cemented even further when he put pen to paper. His autobiography, John Paton, Missionary to the New Hebrides, became a massive breakout success. Even today, it remains one of the most widely read missionary biographies ever published. His deeply personal accounts of surviving hostility, battling disease, and enduring profound heartbreak, they have literally inspired generations for over a century. It's a complete masterclass in faith and perseverance. 50. That is the number of years John Paton spent serving the people of the South Pacific and passionately advocating for global missions before he passed away in 1907. 50 years of refusing to quit, refusing to back down to death threats, and just continuing to relentlessly love the people he was called to serve. The fact that Christianity is so deeply rooted in Vanuatu today is a direct result of that pioneering half-century commitment. So, as we wrap up this explainer on a life marked by unimaginable tragedy and absolutely epic courage, it leaves us with a pretty heavy closing thought. Paton risked everything: his comfort, his family, his literal life. When we look at someone who faced down such incredible life-threatening dangers with that kind of unwavering faith, it really makes you stop and wonder, what obstacles are we letting stand in our own way today? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey, and keep learning.